Hello, and welcome to the Empowered Learning Podcast. This is your host, Andy Bennett. On today's episode, we welcome my good friend, Luke Tvbaugh. Luke is an influential leader in the EdTech space, a world-class fitness photographer, driven, caring, and personable salesperson and consultant, an avid mountain biker, and a loving and committed husband and father. Please help me welcome my good friend, Luke Tvbaugh. Hello, Mr. Luke. How you doing, buddy?
Andy, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this all week long. I'm on this really cool technology that you got to introduce me to, and now we're both on at the same time doing a podcast. Like, my mind is just blown. So cool.
Yeah, one of these days when this blows up, you're going to need a studio. You're going to fly all your guests in, and everybody's going to be in behind this technology.
I know, right? That is the dream. Well, we're ending one year, we're starting a new year, so who knows? Sky's the limit, right?
That's right.
I love it. So you and I have known each other for a very, very long time. I'm sure as we go through our conversation, we'll probably uncover a little bit of some of that story. But before we dive into that piece of it, for our listeners, tell us a little bit about who Luke is and just some interesting things about yourself.
Yeah, so I think I'm infinitely interesting, but let me see what...
I agree with that, actually, but...
No. What do your listeners and viewers care to hear about? So I'm an EdTech salesperson. That's kind of, a common thread between us. I've been in the industry now for 25 years. For a while, I've been saying about 25 years, but now it's actually 25 years. Happy to dive into my origin story at whatever point it makes sense for you. But a year and a half ago, last summer, we moved to Utah. We had spent 21 years in Orlando, and some good things about living in Florida. But for about the last 15 years, we just got tired of sweating all the time. We were ready for seasons again. Sure. I've always been drawn to the mountains, and my family was actually, my wife was a big instigator of us moving out here together. We'd been dreaming about it for a couple of years. So year and a half ago, well, little less than 2 years ago, we just decided, let's make it happen. And within 3 months of that decision that day, while we were walking on this paved trail in Winter Springs, Florida, we decided it. And 3 months later, we moved into our house in Lehigh, Utah.
That's crazy. So how is mountain life treating you so far?
Oh my goodness. I love it. My dog Lemon and she's a cowboy corgi.
I love it. Okay.
Half kind of kettle dog, blue heeler, I think, half corgi. But she and I went for an 8-mile trail jog. Wow. Jog walk. She could have run the whole way, but she's a good hiking buddy. And so we did an 8-miler this morning, and when the weather's right, I mountain bike, and excited to get into snowshoeing and snowboarding and all of it.
That's wonderful. And Lehigh is close to Salt Lake. Is that correct?
Yeah. We're about 25 minutes south of downtown.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned origin story. So before we get into where you're at now, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, family, anything that you think would be interesting or worth sharing.
Yeah. So, for me, a lot of it comes back to the mountains. Grew up in Kansas, kind of knew from the time I was a little kid that I wanted to be in the mountains, but I didn't see a mountain until my senior year of high school when I volunteered at a camp in Colorado Springs. And then I worked at the same camp for one summer in college, and then got married and moved to Florida, and that kind of took the back burner, but now we're here. So yeah, grew up in Kansas, jumped around. I'm a jumper. I used to like to physically jump on things, walls, old cars, window ledges, not quite parkour, but I had a lot of energy as a youth.
Awesome.
But also scholastically and professionally, I've jumped around a bit. I think a lot of people in our space have. I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. And I think that for a while I was very proud of the fact that I was at eInstruction, which we'll get to for a long time. And I am still proud of that history, but it's just, I think my dad, our parents probably spent, a good 20, 30 years, most of our parents' generations just kind of had a job and That's what they retired from after going into it out of high school or college. And that's kind of the way it was. And it's a little different for us, and especially our kids with the gig economy. Um, but yeah, we, at KU, I mentioned jumping around a lot for school. So went to the University of Tulsa to run track and cross country. That was way more than I bargained for. So only lasted a semester as a runner, on a real level. Transferred to the University of Kansas for a couple semesters, took a couple semesters off, got my associates at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, then went back to KU and ended up graduating in 7.5 years, and then stuck around another year while my wife graduated. But a lot of my time at the University of Kansas was spent playing Ultimate Frisbee, and met somebody who ended up becoming a mentor to me, Steve Huff. And Steve, if you're watching this, hey buddy, let's play some disc golf here soon. But so actually, my wife's going to be a big part of this story, and just cut off any of my story or cut out any of my story that you don't think needs to be in the episode. But so my best friend Jeff and I had a bunch of friends that we played Frisbee with a lot. And one day, my wife, who was, my wife at the time, still my wife, she heard Steve talking to Jeff about this technology that he had been using as a graduate teaching assistant. He was friends with the founders, and he was starting to sell it. And Jeff was had been a lumberyard salesman in high school and college. And so he's very outgoing guy, very extroverted. I'm an outgoing introvert, I think. But so Steve was telling Jeff about eInstruction and these clickers. And my wife overheard that conversation, and she said, "You need to learn more about that." Right. I don't want to go into sales. That's not me. And she's like, "Let's ask Steve about it." So we talked to Steve. Back then it was kind of like Mary Kay. You could pay $500 and get a kit of the hardware. And if you sold it, you got a 40% commission, which it was a 40% commission for a long time. And the Daryl and Darren Ward were super generous and innovative, and just fun to work with and for a long time, but very generous. So I worked really hard in like 99 for a month, did a bunch of demos, didn't sell anything. I said, "This is dumb." I knew I wasn't cut out for sales. So I literally put my kit of clickers in a closet for a couple years until we moved to Florida for grad school, and running out of money and credit, as is often the case in grad school. And Lindsay said, "You need to try to sell clickers again here in Florida." I said, "No, I tried that. It doesn't work." She said, "I think you should try." I said, "No, I'll do something else." She said, "I signed you up for a trade show." I was like, "What?"
No choice in the matter, huh?
I didn't even really know what a trade show was. I'd never been to a conference or a convention, let alone what ended up being one of the country's biggest trade shows at the time. Maybe still. It's called ITSEC, IITSEC. I don't. Have you been to ITSEC?
I have been to an ITSEC before. Yep.
Yeah. So that was the first trade show I'd ever been exposed to. Lindsay did the research. She paid our last, used our last probably $3,500 in credit for a 10x10 booth. Got the exhibitor booklet from probably Freeman, and what is carpet and electricity was mandatory. What else is available?
Right.
Furniture, greenery, like plants.
Oh wow. Okay.
She saw in this catalog.
Yeah.
So literally on the way to that first day of the trade show, we stopped at Target. She ran in and got 2 potted plants and made me take those in as part of my trade show. Andy, have you ever had a potted plant in your trade show booth?
I don't think that I ever have.
25 years later, I've never had another potted plant, but because you could rent plants, we assumed that everybody was going to have plant decor.
That's hilarious.
So my wife, just her wisdom and kind of uncanny ability to see the future is 2 of the things I love most about her. Awesome. And that pops up a few more times kind of in my story that maybe we'll get to, but I'll show a quick picture of her. Super proud of Lindsay. This is at her graduation about 2 years ago. She doesn't brag about this a lot, but she graduated toward the top of her class at Emory University, which is the nation's #2 nursing school behind Johns Hopkins.
Wow.
So she is a brilliant, very wise, and these are my hooligans, Lily, Carter, and Pax. But so she's the best person I know. She's the smartest and wisest person I know, and I'm super lucky to have her as a partner in life. So
that's awesome. How many years now?
This August it'll be 25 years of marriage.
Very cool. Very cool.
24.
Awesome. Well, it does sound like she kind of I don't know, was reading the tea leaves right, that knew that you needed to get in with this guy. So tell me more about Dr. Steve Huff, because that is initially kind of where the tie binds, and then you and I have kind of worked together just of the two of ourselves. But Steve was really kind of where it started for me as well. Steve and D. But anyways, but tell me about your first impressions and friendship with Steve.
Well, I met him when he was a lowly PhD candidate. He wasn't the highfalutin doctor that he is now. But I mean, just another one of those kind of. He's a lot like Lindsay. I mean, very wise. He can be Becky, his wife, would probably say that he can be crazy sometimes. But I've always just known him to be very even keel and wise. Wisdom is not my strong suit. I've got some strengths, but like wisdom isn't necessarily one of them. But Steve is one of those wise and he's a good leader. So when Lindsay made me ask Steve about eInstruction, of course, he was a great teacher. I went over to his house, or his townhome in Lawrence, Kansas, and he taught me CPS, the classroom performance system software that went along with clickers, and great teacher. And it was after that I got frustrated and didn't want to do sales and gave it up, and then came back to it a couple years later.
Right.
But he was instrumental again when I picked it back up and learned it and learned how to stay the course and not get super frustrated at no's. I'll also say that when I was walking into that first trade show, another name, Darren Ward, I had called Darren walking into that first trade show, scared to death, no idea what to expect. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. My wife made me do this. It's probably a bad idea. He's like, just relax, CPS, just show people the solution. And if they want it, great. And if they don't, move on. Somebody else will. And that was super, that advice going in, doing something brand new that I'd never done before, that I was super scared about, was just very liberating. Had a great conference, ended up meeting Commander Al Brady with the Navy, who ended up putting a whole bunch of clickers on a whole bunch of submarines and
nuclear subs,
out of Kings Bay, Georgia.
Well. So cool.
So and Steve and Darren were, and a bunch of others that were connected with eInstruction were, childhood acquaintances and friends, and so.
Gotcha. But isn't it funny how similar really our paths were, right? That it was kind of a, I don't know, reluctance in getting into sales. I mean, I was a teacher and thought that was my direction. I was going to be a principal, and EdTech kind of just crashed the party, and got a kind of a hunch. And my wife was very supportive, similar to Lindsay, of like, hey, if this is what, you feel led to, or God's calling you into, it's a little scary, but you got to trust that. And it's been a good journey. It's been a very good journey, and very fortunate to run into and work with for years with Steve, having worked with him and then buying the company that he built, and then now working with you again. It's the people make it awesome. So thankful that we get to connect like this, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. The people are the biggest thing, and I'll butcher this quote, but I've heard it a couple times over. over my, again, 25 years in EdTech sales, when you go to trade shows, you'll see the same people year after year after year. And
Right.
in any given year, somebody's wearing a different polo.
Sure.
And that's the case with me. I've been in quite a few roles in the EdTech, K-12 EdTech space in these years. I am now so Daryl and Darren Ward ran and started the company that I started with. And I really hope that the company I end with, I fully intend for that company to be Ward's Media Tech, another father-son dynamic duo of
different Ward, but same last name. Yes.
Totally different. They don't know each other. They've met through me.
Yeah.
But Brad and Steve Ward, Ward's Media Tech's been around since 1941. Started in the furniture business and then consumer electronics in Long Beach, California, and kind of evolved into education technology, which is K-12 EdTech's been a major focus for ours the last couple decades. But rich history there, and the people, the folks that I work for are very, very, very smart, very personable, outgoing, sporty. When I talk to them about joining the company, they're like, okay, we think everything's a good fit, but you have to be willing to take off the random Wednesday afternoon to go on a trail run with us. And I was like, okay, right. I'm in the right place. I'm in the right place.
If you weren't sure before, that was kind of the cherry on top, huh?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So, through your story, you I don't know, purposefully or just accidentally skipped over kind of a big section there. You stepped away from EdTech for a little while and we're doing some phenomenal photography. I've always wanted to know, and we've spent days and days on end talking together, but I don't know if I've ever really got the story of how did photography get into your life, and how was that, I guess, what was that process of kind of stepping away from that, getting into this? Just tell me about that. I'll bring up some pictures while you're talking.
Well, my wife made me do it.
Okay.
No, well, so again, starts with Lindsay. I'd been an athlete growing up, in high school, as a kid, in high school and college. And then, early years of marriage and starting a family, you can get distracted from taking care of your own kind of physical health. And I hadn't gotten super unhealthy, but I was carrying more weight than I wanted to, and wasn't nearly as active as I wanted to after about 10 or 12 years of, getting out of college. And so there was this new thing called CrossFit that was in vogue in early 10, so like 2010, 11, 12. And Lindsay got me a Groupon in 2013, I think March of 2013, and said, hey, I think you would like this. She knew that I wanted to get active again. And I said, no, I've heard about CrossFit. It sounds dumb. It's like, I don't want to do, it's group fitness. It sounds like jazzercise. I don't want anything to do with that. So she, she's again, wise and has this uncanny sense of foresight, but she didn't push me super hard, but every now and then she would kind of nudge me, hey, I think you'd like it. And it took a couple months for me to cash in that Groupon and go to my first class. And I almost died, but I was hooked. If you've ever talked to somebody that does CrossFit, has done it for more than a couple years, that story is pretty similar. I almost died and I became addicted to it.
And you loved it, right?
Through that near-death experience. So, phones were evolving pretty quickly in those early teen years. I had gotten my, it was on maybe my second iPhone in 2013. So I was taking pictures and putting tons of filters on them and of my friends at the gym, working out, and they were very grungy, but some of them came out okay. And I put them on my Facebook, and the gym owner said, hey, can I use some of these on our Facebook? I said, sure. Yeah. So fast forward, I don't know, a couple months, and I'm like, I think this might be something I'd like to. It started out as a hobby, but didn't stay there for very long at all before I bought a camera that I knew was a good camera. I talked to some friends who were photographers, and they said, get this camera if you want me to be able to help you with it. So I did. That's why I became a Canon guy, because two of my friends were Canon shooters. And if they had been Sony or Nikon shooters, I would have been a Sony or Nikon shooter. But so yeah, late 2013, I started shooting some CrossFit events. And then I think on my LinkedIn, I've got a little bit of overlap at the beginning of a 5-year range from about 2013 to 2019. But for the main part of that, I was a full-time, that's all I did was commercial photography, focused mostly on CrossFit, and some other fitness, companies that maybe focused on weightlifting or powerlifting or yoga. But mainly it was CrossFit. And so I think it'd be interesting. To me, an interesting part of that story is a lot of my friends who I met through CrossFit photography, who were photographers, weren't, able to do it full time or make any significant amount of money because, the events were pretty local and run by gyms, and gym owners, weren't getting rich by running a gym, and they didn't have a lot of extra cash to pay a photographer for, a day or two of work, 12-hour days, and then editing. So one of the first events I did, the gym owner suggested that instead of charging her, and she's a brilliant businesswoman, right? But instead of charging her, I charge the athletes if they want photos.
Yeah.
And so I was one of the first, if not the first that I know of, photographer in the space to, instead of trying to sell a day of work to an event, sell, 15 minutes of work to a couple dozen athletes.
Gotcha.
And it's a lot easier sell when you're asking for, $50 from one athlete instead of $1,500 from a gym owner.
Yeah.
So that was a major, way that I was able to sustain a career in photography for about 5 years, is to be able to work these events. After a while, I would put or pretty quickly, I had a logo that looked like, let me draw it. So just kind of a stylized, just very simple. And I borrowed the idea from another photographer. She had a similar thing with a kettlebell. I didn't want it to be super just specific. That's not a very good kettlebell. Super fitness specific. But so I just had a circle and brackets, kind of looks like a camera. So I would draw that on people's arms if they were my client for that competition.
Okay.
And then during the course of the event, I would look for the logo and I would shoot them and only them. And I would, oftentimes just walk right by a great looking, very fit athlete that, maybe assumed me and my team would shoot them because they're great looking and very fit.
Sure.
But our focus was on our clients and making them feel great about the work they were doing.
Right.
Because it's hard work and it's very scary to participate in an event like that, and you want to capture it. So we were, me and then a lot of my friends who did CrossFit photography were pretty passionate about helping people see the hard work that they were putting in to do something very scary, very difficult. So
that's awesome. That's super cool, man. That's super cool. What a kind of weird dichotomy, right? Between, EdTech sales stuff and photography. And I guess let's see if we can tie the two together. I guess what similarities, differences did you learn and glean from, EdTech sales? And yes, you're doing sales, but you're also, that's very much on the artistic side of things as well. If we drew a Venn diagram, where would the two intersect between those two kind of disparate career paths?
I think marketing, like I didn't do any, I had no training as a marketer or as a salesperson. I don't know if anybody in sales has training as in sales, but yeah, so, after 10 plus years trying to figure out how to get people's attention in order to sell them eInstruction,
right?
The eInstruction solution, and then ExamView and InterWrite. A lot of that carried over, just hard work, early mornings, late nights, not taking no for an answer. No is a very valid answer, but not letting it stop you, not letting no I don't know. I don't believe in not taking no for an answer. No, like I said, no is a perfectly valid answer from a prospect.
Right.
But not letting that like demoralize you and
Sure.
want to stop.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think just the hustle that's needed to be successful in anything,
Right.
was that foundation had begun as a K-12 salesperson and
Mm-hmm.
by necessity marketer
Mm-hmm.
that really helped me moving over to photography. And I did a lot of just very consistent posting in LinkedIn, Instagram rather, on my photography Instagram, and organically grew that community and that following, and wasn't self-promoting. It wasn't, hey, book me, hey, come. It was just, if you look at my feed, it's all just my favorite photos,
Mm-hmm.
and my favorite photos praising the athlete that's featured.
Right.
And my Instagram, I wasn't in it. I would say maybe 0.5% of the posts were about,
Mm-hmm.
Some of it was self-promoting, I
Right.
guess, but if you scroll through there, most of it's about
Right.
this awesome athlete or this product that I was, working for that company to create marketing content, marketing photography for them to use in their marketing campaigns. So,
Gotcha.
but then,
Well, yep, good.
a lot of those events were always on the weekends, always Saturdays, Sundays. Then I got into commercial photography. And so instead of only shooting events, I was also just identifying brands that I wanted to work for and athletes that I wanted to shoot in those brands.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was also kind of a different marketing paradigm shift that I did, that's really helped me. Was I would first just identify some athletes who looked good and moved well, usually 2 or 4 over the course of a weekend, and say, hey, do you want a bunch of free photos and free stuff? And we'll have fun. And they weren't professional athletes. They were kind of everyday people who, like I said, looked good and moved well, and who I wanted to work with. There were people that I wouldn't even call because I wasn't fond of their vibe or whatever. But so then I would get my athletes lined up for a particular weekend in a particular city. So Salt Lake City or San Diego or Atlanta or Charlotte or Miami. And then I would contact, for each of those shoots where I had those 4 athletes lined up, I had a list of about 100 companies that I would regularly reach out to.
Wow.
And say, would you like me to shoot these athletes in your stuff on this weekend in this city? And every time, I'd reach out to 50 to 100 companies. And a lot of times they would say, no, thanks, not this time. If they always only said no, I took them off my list. But, these companies knew that I was going to be reaching out to them regularly. And from time to time, they would use me for that campaign.
Right.
And it was really a kind of a refreshing way to do things. I wasn't always only shooting the same brands. I wasn't always only shooting the same athletes. Wasn't always only shooting in the same city. So I got a lot of variety. It was a lot of fun, a lot of weekend travel, a lot of weekday editing. And I just eventually got tired of all the weekend travel, wanted to spend more time at home. So decided in 2019-ish, it was time to come back to K-12 EdTech, where most teachers and principals and district administrators don't want to hear from us on Saturday and Sunday. So
there you go.
A good place for me right now.
So that said, though, and maybe it's a different season of life. I know you do not shy away from a company trip, right? If you need to go, you are Johnny on the spot to go for that. Is that just your personality? Do you enjoy travel? What about travel for work or otherwise do you enjoy the most?
So I do enjoy all of it. We can talk about some of my joy in it, but guess who else loves me and is pushing me to be known in these different markets?
Guessing probably your wife,
Lindsay. Yeah. So 25 years of marriage, our relationship is, I think, stronger than ever. It's only gotten better for us. Sadly, not the case for everybody, but for us, things have just gotten better and better between us. And she's like, if you need to spend 2 weeks every month in Las Vegas in order to become known to those schools, do it.
Wow.
And so a big part of it is her encouragement. And a big part of it is just me wanting to go where the opportunities are. You know, we came to Utah not for opportunity business-wise, but for adventure and natural beauty, knowing that we could make a life here business-wise. My wife's an ICU RN at Intermountain Healthcare, and will be getting her doctorate of nursing at some point in the next couple of years.
Cool.
So I don't, you know, if we want to get into that transition here, we can. But so yeah, and I love windshield time. A lot of sales reps who've been doing sales for 25 years maybe have gotten tired of windshield time, but after that point, but I still love it. I love, you know, I was at a company, and I won't say it on this podcast. The manager that told me this is not there anymore, to that company's credit, but they said, when you're driving around the West, this is when I was with a company between Pathway Innovations and Ward's Media Tech for just a few months, that manager said, you need to redeem as much of the driving time as you can, making customer phone calls. Of course, he didn't tell me to text or email while I was driving.
That's good.
But I'm like, I'm not going to try to redeem driving time by being productive with customers. Maybe I'll listen to a podcast or listen to a book that might be beneficial business-wise, but mostly it's just pleasure, audiobook reading or listening to music, and, you know, just kind of letting my mind wander during that drive time. But so, yeah, and I don't mind flying, but I'd much rather just have the freedom to drive here and there when I need to go. And so, yeah. And it'll be many decades before I get tired of driving around the West after 20 years of driving I-95 between Orlando and Miami, sometimes twice a week. Loved my clients in Palm Beach and Broward and Miami, but they aren't as pretty as the Rocky Mountains and the Wasatch Range.
That is true. That is true. So I've really enjoyed working with you for the last little bit here, and we've just engaged on another level with my company coming on as a partner with Ward's Media Tech. And one of the things that is most exciting for me about that is your, I don't even know, ravenous search for amazing new products. It always just impresses me how much, and now that I've heard the backstory, you know, you've got Steve on your, you know, kind of on your history. Lindsay's always pushing you to find new things, but let me tell you, my friend, that some of that is worn off on you, because it seems like you are always looking for what is another solution that can be impactful and help your clients and that kind of stuff.
Well, so we haven't named it yet, and this is a representation of, I think, what you're getting at. But so this thing that we're using here is called eGlass. So I have a lot of friends who are at a major competitor of ours. And so I was at a company called Trox for a little bit. It became Bloom, Bluum. A lot of great people there. They're doing great work. It's an EdTech reseller, direct competitor to us, 1 billion times bigger, probably almost literally. And not literally. I mean, they do about $1 billion in business a year, which is behemoth. But we do more than $1 a year. So it's not 1 billion times bigger. But so I was at that company for a while, and in our active portfolio, we had thousands of products from hundreds of manufacturers. And then you could get tens of thousands of more products through distribution, which I'm happy to say we can do now also at Ward's Media Tech. But like, just for about a year at the onset of the pandemic, my job was basically just kind of taking orders for cables and projectors And what I joined Trox because I wanted to be out meeting customers, but I didn't very quickly. And again, I worked for with some people that I really respected and liked. I worked for Mike Logan. I don't know if you know Mike Logan very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should get him on the podcast.
Okay, for sure.
So I'll connect you guys. But, loved working with Mike for that year. We'd been working together for years at eInstruction. But I had always been the guy that had that one thing. So for a long time, it was clickers from eInstruction. Then for a long time, it was my photography, and I was part of that product. And then I came to Trox, and it was way more than I wanted to juggle.
Right.
So then I started looking for what was next for me, and I came across a video of eGlass being used by Craig Justice. Love Craig. I called Craig. We had known each other through the EdTech, circuit for years. And I said, I want to come work with you and sell eGlass. He said, well, we're not hiring. I said, that's okay. I still want an interview. And he said, okay. So he said, we're busy for the next few weeks, follow up whenever it was. I don't remember. But so I kind of every week I just, dripped on him a little bit. And finally he set up a meeting between me and Ji Shen, the inventor of eGlass and the founder of Pathway Innovations, the company. And we had a great chat, and we really hit it off. I love G. He's a kind of a mad scientist, but he's brilliant. And he's invented some amazing ed tech over the last decades. And eGlass is one of those latest creations. And so it was something that I guess, I didn't willingly go into sales. I didn't want to get money for something that somebody didn't want or need. I got pushed into eInstruction by Lindsay, whom I love and who loved me. And schools responded and students needed it. And then there were athletes that needed to see how amazing they are. And so I was blessed, lucky, whatever, to be able to help these athletes see just how impressive what they're doing is. Everyday people who are doing hard things. So I think that's the bottom line, is like, I want to be filthy rich. I want to, in the next year or two, be able to take a month off in the summer to mountain bike and a month off in the winter just to snowboard, and then take long weekends the rest of the time because I'm so rich that I can afford it. And the company's so successful that everybody's doing it at Wards Media Tech. But I've never been in a position where that's going to happen in spite of what I'm doing for the people that I'm working for, namely students and teachers. So thankfully, and it's probably not on accident, there's probably someone in the universe that's been pushing me in this regard. And certainly Lindsay has been a force for good in my life to help me do good things. So
I love it. I love it.
I really want to help teachers and students.
Yep. You and me are right on the same path for that. And I would like to say, like Lindsay and Steve did for you, I thank you for pushing me to adopt this new technology and give it a whirl. And I think that this podcast is greatly due to the fact that we have this cool technology and this cool platform to be something different, right? I mean, if you're listening on audio, that's great. Thanks for listening. Check out the video. It's way cooler.
Also, I will say, if you're just listening, or even if you're watching, Andy sounds a little better than me. He's got a professional studio mic, and he's getting a better one even soon.
Oh, right.
I'm just using the microphone that's built into eGlass, and I would venture to say I sound pretty good too.
Yes, you do.
Definitely better than, if I were using the mic built into a Bluetooth headset or my laptop. So.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, no, eGlass is one of those game changer technologies for sure that has just such a cool application across so many different levels, education, teachers, but also corporate as well. And now podcasting. Who would have thunk it, right? Pretty cool.
Love it.
Pretty cool. Well, time flies when you're having fun, and unfortunately, we've kind of I wouldn't say hit the end, but we're drawing to a close here. So I'm going to pull up my fancy little thing here, hopefully, and we're gonna do a grab bag question. So I'm gonna ask Luke one of my 20 questions here. I'm gonna get my little dealy bob here. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. And whichever question he gets, that's the one he has to answer. He doesn't know what it is. Let's see which one it's going to be. Question number 1. Well, there you go. Question number 1 is, Mr. TV Baugh, what is your proudest accomplishment?
Landing Lindsay for easy. So we had been
an easy one.
We had been friends for just really, really good friends / best friends for about 3 years before we even started dating. She had kind of seen me at my worst and my goofiest and my, and she was kind of in every circle she's ever run in. She's been the best person and the kindest and the most thoughtful in those groups. Won every award in high school, both, qualitative and quantitative. I don't know if that's the right word. Subjective and objective,
Yep.
just the best person. And so when I said, "Hey, I think we should start dating," she laughed at me. And for weeks and weeks, she kind of says no. She said no. So what's 6 months before Valentine's Day? It'd be August 14th, right?
Yeah.
August, September, October, November, December, January, February. Yeah. So August 14th is when I told her, 1998. I said, we're going to start dating. We're great friends and this just feels right. And she said, "No, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to date you." And I was just, I don't know. I mean, I was persistent. I pursued her. I had fallen in love with my best friend and, kind of finally she was like, "Okay, I guess we're dating." I was like, "Yeah, we've been dating since August 14th.
You don't remember this?
Yeah. February 14th, 1999, I proposed. August 14, 1999, we were married. So, Lindsay is my proudest accomplishment. And
awesome.
She's not an accomplishment. She's,
I know
guess
what you mean.
Landing her. Yeah, landing her. But,
quote unquote.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, she better watch this because it's been equally about Luke and Lindsay. So did I spell that right, by the way?
Lindsay. Yep.
Hey, look at there. All right. Very cool. I love it. Yep. She'll get a kick out of this, even though I'm not sure if she's anything like my wife. She'll probably not like any attention, but Lindsay, it's well deserved.
She's very humble too.
Yeah. I love it. So, Luke, I ask all of our guests 3 key questions. They're always the same. The grab bag, we never know what that one's going to be, but these ones are the same for everybody. So number 1, who is the leader that you most admire and try to emulate?
The leader most admire, try to emulate. I mean, Lindsay might be played out by this point, but I mean, it's impossible for me not to say Lindsay. At every point of our relationship, she's been a few steps ahead of me in a good way.
Yep.
In the evolution of our religious outlook, political outlook, societal outlook, business outlook. Like she is, and I grew up in a kind of a strong patriarchal tradition. And my favorite mugs, and it's backwards, but it says "Well-behaved women rarely make history."
Yep, I love that.
My favorite mug. So I'm a staunch feminist now, and Lindsay is the leader whom I most admire and try to emulate. Mainly, just her empathy toward others and wisdom in life.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Lindsay, if you're listening to this, you have my word, which I know we have not met yet, but I'm sure we will soon, that I'm not paying Luke to say any of this stuff. I'm sure this is coming directly from his heart. All right. Question number 2, my friend. What learning has most impacted you in the last year?
What learning?
So it could be a conference, a conversation, a book, a podcast. I don't know. Meeting
You don't have any. Okay.
Handsome guy from Cortez. I don't know. Maybe that was the most thing that you learned from this year. I don't know.
I mean, I think a lot of it, certainly, Lindsay and I have tried to be kind of pioneers in our lives. We've done a lot of new things that, that weren't obvious.
Okay.
In terms of like our history or upbringing or whatever. And this was a year and a half ago that we moved to Utah. But I think over that time, just kind of realizing that like you're kind of in charge. You can do what you want. I mean, there are obviously limitations and roadblocks that need to be overcome. But I think if 10 years ago we had decided to do something like move to Utah because we just wanted to, and we wanted mountains and seasons and, things like that, that we would have found reasons that we couldn't.
Okay.
But we just did it and learned, oh, we can do that. We have a lot more power than we thought. So I think I don't know. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I love it.
Just to be totally cliche and rip off Nike, just do it. Like,
just do it. I love it.
You want to do it? Do it.
I was thinking it. All right. Wrong one. So last question for you. Question number 3 is, how would you, so empowered learning, obviously the name of the podcast. This is kind of a fun way to end it, just because this is going to be a little bit different from your vantage point, from your lens. But how would you empower learning for future generations?
Definitely validate and value those those individuals and those generational movements, ideas and desires. So, I think, I didn't know that I could be an artist until I accidentally got into photography by becoming a CrossFitter.
Right.
And so I think just embracing how your kids are different than you, and celebrating that. And of course, each generation is going to change and have its own hallmark or rally cry or whatever, like, not to assume that your generation did it right or did it the only way that it can or should be done. So
right.
Validate and value those ideas and desires.
Very good. Well, Luke, it's been a blast. Like I said, I literally have been looking forward to this all week. You and I talk often, and we're on eGlass talking about, one thing or the other, but to just have the opportunity to kind of hear your heart and get a little bit deeper than just, this show or that show. It's been a pleasure and an honor. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I'm not sure I've ever met Crystal, and I don't think
we have.
I don't think you've ever met Lindsay.
8 hours away. This has got to happen. We got to.
Yeah, we got to get together, get the families together.
You bet. Well, have a Merry Christmas. Say hello to Lindsay. I can't wait to meet her, because it sounds like she's the inspiration behind it all. So give her my best. And
you're going to want to just work with her after you meet her. And
well, I'm stuck with you.
All right. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Bye.